The death toll soaring as the bodies of Iranians pile up in the streets amid the regime's brutal and bloody crackdown on protesters across the country. These new images circulating online of demonstrators in the streets and fires burning in cities across Iran. ABC News cannot independently verify the numbers, but U.S.-based human rights activist news agency says compiled data confirms more than 500 deaths. And at least 10,600 people have reportedly been arrested. The protests stretching into their 15th day, the government cutting off the internet, cell phones, and landlines in a nationwide communications blackout as leaders try to slow their momentum. Protesters continue to post videos on social media showing massive turnouts in Tehran. Protesters posting this video showing a government tax office being set ablaze. It all started on December 28th after a currency crisis, with people demanding regime change over the cost of living and severe inflation. Iranian leaders speaking on state television. Iran's president promising to address the economic situation, but said the unrest is being fueled by the U.S. and Israel. President Trump has warned Iran the U.S. would get involved if protesters are shot. Secretary of State Marco Rubio discussing possible intervention with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday, as a top Iranian official warned the U.S. military and Israel would be legitimate targets. The anger on the streets in Iran spreading to major cities across the globe, from Sydney to Paris to London to Orange County, California. Iran has seen large protests before, like in 2019 over an increase in fuel prices. Then again in 2022, sparked by Masha Amini's death in police custody after she was arrested for not wearing a headscarf. The defiance then led to severe government crackdowns.
Here at home, more unrest in Minneapolis after an ICE agent shot and killed a mother of three. Tensions flared up over the weekend, sparked by what Homeland Security is calling its biggest immigration enforcement operation ever. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood.
The nationwide outcry over the death of 37-year-old Renee Good spilling into a fifth day. Demonstrations from New York to Los Angeles. And in Minneapolis, ICE and Customs and Border Protection agents ramping up their operations, clashing with protesters. Demonstrators surrounding officers. Agents deploying what appears to be pepper spray. Before smashing through the front door of this home, leading a man out in cuffs. Agents transporting detainees to this federal building. And a growing standoff outside this federal building in Minneapolis. Federal agents on one side, dozens of demonstrators on the other, all calling for ICE to go home. Secretary Kristi Noem saying they're sending hundreds of more agents to the city and doubling down on her initial claim that ICE agent Jonathan Ross acted in self-defense when he shot Renee Good last week. That assessment made just hours after the shooting and before the investigation even began.
The vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him. That is the definition. When there is something that is weaponized to use against the public and law enforcement, that is an act of domestic terrorism.
Noem's response only fueling more frustration. Lawmakers calling for transparency in the FBI's investigation.
How can we trust the federal government to do an objective, unbiased investigation without prejudice, when at the beginning of that investigation they have already announced exactly what they saw, what they think happened.
And the push for DHS reforms could turn into a budget battle. Senator Chris Murphy says some Democrats could withhold DHS funding, which could put a possible government shutdown in play. Morgan Norwood, ABC News, Minneapolis.
Morgan, thanks. President Trump's motorcade was forced to take a different route than usual in Florida last night due to what the White House called a suspicious object. It's not clear what the object was. The motorcade was taking Trump to the airport for his return to Washington when the discovery was made. The Secret Service said the other route was taken as a precaution.
Senate testimony last summer when he was defending the renovation of the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says the U.S. Justice Department is investigating him. He says they are threatening a criminal indictment over his Senate testimony last summer when he was defending the renovation of the federal building. However, now Powell claims the subpoenas are actually about politics. Well, here's part of that testimony last June. Watch.
There's no VPI dining room. There's no new marble. We took down the old marble. We're putting it back up. We'll have to use new marble where some of the old marble broke, but there's no new, there are no special elevators. They're old elevators that have been there. There are no new water features. There's no beehives, and there's no roof terrace gardens. All of the sort of inflammatory things that the media carried are either not in the current plan or just inaccurate.
The DOJ put this statement out. The Attorney General has instructed her U.S. attorneys to prioritize investigating any abuse of taxpayer dollars. Edward Lawrence of Fox Business is at the White House. Edward, break it down for us. What is the reality in this moment? Is Powell right or wrong?
Really interesting here, and no administration has ever sent a sitting Federal Reserve chairman a criminal subpoena for a grand jury. Now, the Fed chairman here made a very rare posting message in response to this. Listen.
But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role.
He calls those pretexts for the reason the subpoena came. He believes political pressure to lower interest rates faster. Fed Chairman Jay Powell says public service requires standing firm in the face of threats. Now, some Republicans in the House and Senate have issues with the decision by the Department of Justice. Representative Brian Steele from Wisconsin says it's important for the Fed to stay independent. Senator Tom Tillis says that he will not vote for any Fed chair nomination until this legal matter has been settled. The White House referring me to that statement from the Department of Justice. Now, on the next Fed chair, Fox Business first reported that the president will meet BlackRock's Rick Reeder on Thursday. He will be the final interview before the president makes his choice. And Harris, there are 4 people the president is now choosing from on a final list of candidates for the next Fed chairman. Back to you.
Edward, thank you very much. The Trump administration is expanding its look at financial fraud as Minnesota's massive scandal keeps growing. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent now says his department will look into the alleged theft of more than $9 billion taxpayer dollars that were supposed to go to services for needy families in Minnesota. And going beyond that, a new column argues Minnesota's Somali taxpayer swindle, welfarism, plus immigration without assimilation is a toxic mix. Even Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey admits, there's a problem.
Look, obviously, everybody could have done more to prevent fraud. Look, the fraud's real. We've all got to acknowledge it. The fraud is very real. And by the way, when somebody commits fraud, and there are many that have done that, you investigate it, you charge, you prosecute, and yeah, you put the person in jail.
Fox Business's Grady Trimble on Capitol Hill. Grady.
Hi, Harris. The Treasury Department is taking several steps to investigate fraud in Minnesota. First and foremost, it's forming a new task force to look into money transfer firms as well as other financial institutions as part of this crackdown. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, has already notified 4 of those money transfer firms that they are under investigation, though Bessent didn't say which ones. He also says the IRS is auditing some banks involved in wire transfers, looking for money laundering. Recent trial evidence revealed that some government funds were sent to banks in Kenya, China, and potentially Somalia to the tune of up to $9 billion.
All entities in the administration will be pursuing this so that we can get the biggest recoveries possible, and we will see. And we are going to leave no stone unturned, whether it was fraudulent real estate, whether it is money that has been wired overseas. We will be tracking it to the Middle East and East Africa.
And the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, is sending additional Justice Department prosecutors to Minnesota to help put fraudsters behind bars. Bessent says, Harris, that this investigation in Minnesota is just the starting point, that they're going to use this investigative blueprint, if you will, to root out fraud across the country. Harris?